Welcome to TOOKY'S Sidebar, a book club for the petite bourgeois. I'm David.
I'm Gabe, the resident dark elf in chief.
And I'm Capitalissimo, and I am imagining what has been unburdened by what can be.
And we're back after a long absence, longer than we intended, due to strange life circumstances on all three of our lives simultaneously.
A perfect storm of imperfect circumstances.
Yeah, due to recent events, Mr. Thiel invited us to his new island he bought off a discount.
And boy, is my ass
we
tired.
Were parting of... Exactly. You know, Mr. Thiel gave us a raise as a junior associate of the Talmudic order. We got stock options now. So, you know, we're going to be a real life podcast. Like, we're going to buy a podcast studio off of Palantir stock now. The options are,
we have the option to purchase things at market price whenever the market is open using a great app that you too can download. It's Robinhood. If you use code TOOKY'S mag, nothing will happen because we're not sponsored.
Yeah, even though it's just a green screen. That blue-white temple behind us, that's not real. Yeah.
Well, we're making over $45 now, thanks to Mr. Thiel's patronage due to recent events.
Yes, thank you to all of our Peter Thiel sock puppet accounts. We love every single one of you.
And today we're back with something a little different. It's a topic episode. Get out your popcorn. It's another book report. Today we're talking about a deep dive I've been doing into let's label this, drum roll please, Parapolitics, a study of contemporary lefty linguistics.
Wait a minute. Is this parapolitics like the Paralympics? Is this politics for retards?
Is there crippled pussy on the table right now? Have you ever seen the movie Chasing Amy?
There is some retardation in this story. But anyway, I brought this in, and you guys, as the loyal co-hosts you are, you have not done any research specifically so that I can present some of these ideas new to you, hopefully. I guess before I do my little book report here, when I say the word parapolitics to you guys, does anything come to mind? Do you have familiarity with that, either as a historical term or as a contemporary linguistic trend?
Yeah, when I hear parapolitics, when I think about it, it's like metapolitics. It's like meta. It's like outside the text. It's like politics for like society. Like when we think politics, we think of like cookies, right? We think people offering cookies to each other, like bakery. But in reality, when you think about metapolitics, it's about interest groups. So it's like the meta. It's about outside the text. So when I hear parapolitics, I think of like a hyper macroeconomics. I think like what Mises did to economics, like whoever thought the idea of metapolitics did to politics, basically.
I guess I'm thinking of something. It's sort of the same relation to the formal political system as paramilitaries are to the formal military system. Sort of, yeah, like a
exactly.
Not formally political, but maybe related to the forming of networks and the framing of narratives in ways that, might have cachet down the line, but don't have a defined political goal when they're put out there.
Mm-hmm.
Guerrilla
warfare politics, basically, partisan politics.
No, that's very, very reasonable extrapolations based on our phonemes that we have presented here. And we shared this with a friend of the show, Prudentialist. I mentioned this to him. He had shared a book that he had read labeled, what was the title here? Parapolitics, Cultural Freedom in the Cold War. And he mentioned that he was aware of it as something in reference to the CIA, specifically in some writings from the 1970s, I believe it was. And so that I initially brought this up to you guys as something I was doing a deep dive into because a stalker of ours had mentioned it. So I wouldn't even say not even the best stalker I've ever had. We've been blessed with one or two cyber stalkers since we started this.
It's so great. We have
they're not
absolute micro niche, and there are still seething, hideous ogres on the internet hating on folks who are just normal, reasonable, sensible, centrist book fans. Word cells, even.
Yes. Sensitive young men. That's what they hate. They hate sensitive young virile.
Yeah. And the story of this one, and guys, you were there for some of it, so feel free to fill any detail. It was on Twitter. All of a sudden, the main TOOKY'S account, which is basically just mine one where I just post all the videos and such, got added to a list. And it was called Literary Pursuits. And it was this strange, probably trans person. I'm not really sure. this troonish character was adding us along with the likes of Dan Baltic, Apocalypse Confidential, who they really seem to have a huge hate boner for. And like a bunch of other people that we're kind of aware of or loosely follow. And I started doing a little counter intel and looking at what they're doing, what they're talking about. And they kept talking about parapolitics, and they had one or two people that were commenting because no one was watching what they do or gave a shit about. They were like ranting every day about the parapolitical, this, that, the other. And someone else was saying like, oh, you're really, one of their little followers was saying, oh, you're really, you're doing the hard work. You're putting in the deep research necessary to track these like bad actors. And I was like, what? I never heard that term parapolitical. And I definitely, it's not something that would have applied to us based on, like you guys were saying, what I guessed the meaning would be. And this happened months ago, and it's just kind of been in the back of my head. So the other day I started doing some research into it, and I kind of came across a new subculture. I'll call this the noided subculture. Are you guys familiar with the term noided?
I'm not familiar with that. Are you talking about the red fellow who ruins Domino's Pizza?
Boomer alert. Avoid the noid. Did you play the video game?
I definitely played the noid, and I played
the
7-Up Spot game.
Yes.
For the Sega Genesis, I smoked weed and filled my belly with diet soda and played the noid video game for
Zoomers
the NES.
Will never know this pleasure. Yeah. Yeah, I remember jamming out at my cousin's house playing both those games. I don't know if they gave that shit away free with pizzas or something, but that's all they had, and they were pretty poor. So, but anyway, the noid, noided is a term used within this new community I discovered of I would call them sort of Marxist conspiracy theorist, and noided is short for paranoid, which comes from, I believe, the death grips. They use the term noided, or it was like a misattribution of the term noided to them. Regardless, this sort of noided, conspiracy-minded Marxist group has sort of a consistent visual style, something I call the JFK assassination wave visual style rather than fash wave, which is like a lot of black and white, high amplification of like colors, high contrast on 60s or 70s era like photos, the sort of grainy resolution.
I see that you have dropped some photos for us. This really looks like a 1980s zine. Like a Xeroxed, like maybe initially cobbled together using a Sharpie and various things that were like literally taped together.
Yeah. Is this the Great Lobster magazine you're referencing?
Yes.
Yeah, which
a very DIY.
Yeah.
No, it's a strong aesthetic.
Is old.
It's strong. Yeah.
Yeah, no hate on the look. It's like a cultural marker I've noticed going through this. And Cap, you bring up a good point. I want to do a research land acknowledgement before we go any farther. Shout outs to the one I followed the most of this sort of milieu of people is called Subliminal Jihad. I'll probably link them below or something. And they're one of the ones I shared a link with you guys too. They seem to be the most refined of this community. You know, like with all things, there's sort of better and lower quality thinkers within the community. So anyway, I'll put a pin in that. Also, Twitter, retards on Twitter. There's a lot of them. I was researching by just like seeing people's conversations. And they were like having all these arguments about within their community of defining parapolitical. Lobster Magazine, which you mentioned, Cap, and also big shout out to Wiki Spooks. Can we have some applause? Wiki Spooks.
Yes, golf clap.
Great stuff.
We love our black Wikipedians, man.
But anyway, so I presented, I guess a first overview to you guys visually of what I'm talking about. Do you guys, having seen that, do you have any like awareness of this sub-community at all, or is this still kind of coming fresh?
No, I don't. Although I am realizing that perhaps I did read a book a while back called Revolutionary Demonology by Gruppo de Noon out of France, as well as this Conspiracist Manifesto out of another French group. These both are ostensibly leftist, but I am seeing overlap, and I am assuming that these are related, and I would like the urge to know more is growing.
Well, I'm looking at the link you posted, and I see the reference to the deep state. So this is pure a Straussian concept of esoteric politique.
Okay, before I go into what they are now, because what I'm more interested in is not so much parapolitical, the term, as a historical use for it, more what I see as forming as like a new subculture that I believe is like for the last 3 years seems to be growing, and I think is going to grow bigger. This sort of paranoid lefty conspiracy subculture. And I have reasoning behind that. But just to cover quickly, historically, like where does this term parapolitical, where's it come from?
Where's it going? What does it do for fun?
And by the way, speaking of deep dives in leftism, I don't know if you guys or anyone listening has like gone into the lefty space recently. The wall of text meme is so fucking real, dude. Like you have no idea how much 2X podcast I listen to and like skimming to get to the fucking meat where these people like these guys no shit have like 4-hour episodes covering like 3 quotes. And it's like, oh my God, dude, like are you shit? Like they just it's just words.
I wish I could be that productive.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why the leftists, it's because they're purposely constructing a system that's unintuitive.
Counterintuitive.
Because they had to construct an entire counterintuitive. Yes, they don't believe in intuition. They have to negate the concept of intuitive systems of logic.
100%. And I saw a lot of that. The kind of people in this subculture, they come from a few camps. One of them is this like deep political philosophy nerd type personality, and which is probably where some of this interest comes from for some of these like older heads in it. But anyway, I'll just read this quote here. Peter Dale Scott, author he wrote in the 70s about like assassination of JFK and some other sort of conspiracies and CIA stuff. So he has a definition of parapolitics as only one manifestation of deep politics. That's David aside. That just means the deep state, the actions of the deep state. Deep politics, all those political practices and arrangements, deliberate or not, which are usually repressed rather than acknowledged. It's a system of practice of politics in which accountability is consciously diminished, and covert politics, public affairs, which are not rationally debated by responsible decision-making parties, but instead by collusion and deceit. So hearing that definition, does that sound like the TOOKY'S mag, the Sidebar Boys to you? Like, are you...
It sounds like the bread and butter to me. We are the right-wing deep state.
That was my reaction to Cap. I was like, what the fuck? Why are these people calling me this? And so...
No, because from their point of view, we are the tastemakers of the right. We are critics. If you notice, before we came about, because we were called this concept from a certain associate from Twitter. The reason why is because we are tastemakers. From the left's point of view,
you can't see me making these slow jack-off motions.
No, from their point of view, we're an institution because we're doing what they did, which is establish a credentialed network of like prestige, right? We're the prestige network from their point of view of what is literature and what is not. From their point of view, they rather think there's no such thing as right-wing literature, or there's no right-wing concept. Because if there is a right-wing literature, if there is right-wing prestige, then there's an idea of a right-wing elite. And from a right-wing elite, there's an idea of a right-wing vanguard. And the last 40, 50, 60 years, the leftists rely on this concept of a total monopoly on the concept of vanguardism, of this novelty, of this like Pavlovian Pavlovian, what's it called?
That would
pyramid
not
of needs. Yeah.
Maslow.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Maslow. Yes, Pavlov's cousin, Maslow's pyramid of needs. They have a monopoly on that idea. So the reason why they attack us, not even authors, because right-wing authors have been publishing for like the last, like Mike Mall's not getting attacked.
I'm sure he is actually.
Well, yeah, but not in a serious degree. The reason why they attack us is because they see us as an attempting of a gardener cultivation of a walled garden, as a rival castle. And once there's castle, there's an idea of resistance, and they fear resistance.
We have a box fort because Dad got a new refrigerator. That's about as.
That's the redoubt, baby.
Yes,
a very tasteful box fort.
Dare you assault my citadel? Yeah.
But to your guys' point, and I agree generally what you're saying, Gabe, in terms of it's viewed as a challenging idea. And so I've come up with, I should also mention there's other just definitions of parapolitics. That's just the most prominent. And most of the other ones are there's just way more just gobbledygook, frankly, and talking about, but it's all about the use of power at the state level. Or the other thing is like non-state entities exercising power to some extent, or like guild structures, things like that.
Or like a paramilitary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Or like family dynamics. So some political philosophers define it much more broadly, just any political power exercised not through the most official of channels, which is an interesting thing that they define it in such a way. But I'll just say I've after a lot of research, I've come to the conclusion, and the reason I'm sharing this is because I think we're all going to have to come to term with this phraseology in the coming months and years, because I think it's going to increase in popularity. And I don't want people to go through a rabbit hole like I did, like what the fuck are they talking about? Because there's contemporary usages I see of the term parapolitical. The first being a conspiracy, a lefty-coded interpretation, a Marxist reading of a conspiracy, particularly one enacted by the CIA or state-level intelligence or backed by it. And the other one is basically metapolitics, someone acting in a way that is like indirectly political or like serves a political end in like an unstated manner. And I think that is what I'm seeing them describe there. So there's sort of like this loose expansion of the term.
Yeah, in that sense, it very much would be us in that, in the latter sense.
It is?
Yeah, I mean, we're not funded by the CIA.
Yet. We're not funded by the CIA yet. Project 2025, who knows?
But a challenge I want to present to anyone that uses this term and maybe sees this is like, what separates someone like us from someone who they consider as good, quote unquote, doing any kind of similar projects? Ultimately, isn't any project a metapolitical project at some level? And I see this term as, it's almost like calling something woke, or like calling something as, I don't know, whatever cultural signifier of what side it's on, where it seems like you could apply it to anyone, right? You could say Joe Rogan is like extremely parapolitical in the metapolitics sense, or any.
Oh, absolutely. He is definitely, from their point of view, he is definitely.
Or any mainstream TV show.
But these are like any podcast. These are also, yeah. I mean, you would also have to say, okay, you know how when you get red pilled, you watch the regular news and you're like, oh, you just said something that really gives away your whole frame. How could anyone possibly take this seriously? Except that's the actual default dominant perspective. And it's not weird and doesn't seem like frame reinforcement or a weird spin on the events of the day to the vast majority of people, right? And that's true if you're like red-pilled in the Yarvin sense of being a rightist, right? Or if you're red-pilled in the broader sense of just being skeptical and you are a lefty, right? Like, I am sure that an avowed Marxist would find watching CNN about as tolerable as I do, right? So yeah, I mean, it seems like something that gets applied. It seems like something that would apply to the vast majority of things, right? And maybe the definition of the political is just the things cease to be parapolitical when they're maybe enforcing whatever the dominant narrative strain is.
Well, I would like to bounce off of that because Cap is 100% right. I'd like to quote two books, both from the same author, Carl Schmitt, Concept of the Political and Theory of the Partisan, which are both very good books, which every dissident rightist read. What did he mean by parapolitical? What are the critics, leftists, believe by this? What they mean by this is political. What is political is the threat, the potential for physical violence. Because when we say political, when our parents, say political, what do you mean is party politics? Is the blue team going to have more paperwork inside this little weird box contraption than the red team, right? What the uniparty, basically. Under the Schmittian understanding of politics is fundamentally based on, is Group A going to physically enforce, aka threaten a violence against Party B? When they see us, when they see the idea of a counter institution, either be a Silicon Valley recently or a counter literary movement or something along these lines, what they see is a potentiality of enforcement. The key word being is enforcement. The reason why they're threatened by us, the reason why us being a very, very small fish in a pond, the reason why we were put on a watch list. Cap was the first person of the trio to be put on a watch list. The reason why that is because they see us building counter institutions. And what is the purpose of institution? Is quality control. So from the leftist point of view, from the purest realpolitik, they're afraid of the idea of valuable, credentialed people with talent, people who are able to enforce a statement or a sense of being upon people around them. So they're afraid of people instead of paying a subscription to NPR or Fresh Air, instead of paying money to buy books of Robin DiAngelo or wherever the fuck, we pay money to spend on Passage Press or on Adam D. Lou's Renspec or whatever the fuck. Right? They're terrified of losing the idea of credentials, of quality. That's what they're terrified of the idea of losing quality participants to us. That's
well, actually, there's an aspect of this I haven't mentioned to you guys yet that's important that ties into that. And I want to emphasize we were no way special in being targeted by this. Like, there was a lot of other people and bigger fish. It's just more, it's like an
sometimes
instinct
the minnow
or a
also
descriptor
falls
they
into
apply.
the trawl net.
Exactly. But this community, to Gabe's point there, is actually experienced. It looks like it experienced within the last 3 months or so, some Civil War splits arguments, and a lot of it was sort of gate guarding, accusations of thoughts leading to reactionary thought leaking into the space. People pursuing topics they shouldn't have.
Wrong thing.
Yeah. I think possibly spurred by some of this Israel stuff. I didn't get into the exact beefs. It's a laundry list.
Are you saying that they horseshoed into the JQ?
That's my suspicion. But I haven't listened to any the debates or arguments or whatever. But all I have to say, there is this tension there that I think is super interesting as a, I guess, okay, to the meat of it, I think that they're like on a path they can't turn away from. And I think that's why this is going to be a growing movement. So
I have one question. In your research, have you found that there is any overlap or any genetic association with Discordianism?
Discordian, like Discord
No,
people?
no. Discordianism is in the Principia Discordia, like the like pseudo religious pseudo satire movement that started in the 70s. Like Robert Anton Wilson was associated with it. No, you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay,
no, I haven't seen that term.
This
come up
feels
specifically.
feels very Discordian.
Does it have ties to like Luciferianism in like the gay way? Like, does it have ties to that at all?
I would say that yes, but only in the sense that like it's not a genetic tie to it, but only in the sense of like the irreverent groups tended to be associated with it. Like, it's not quite as cringe as like flying spaghetti monster style atheism, but it's that would be more associated, I think.
Yeah.
Would Robert
Crumb was not a Discordian, no, and also I mean, maybe you could say that he I don't know, that sort of like weirdo hippie movement was influential on the formation of Discordianism. I think that'd be fair to say. But like Crumb also experienced his heyday before Discordianism happened. So,
well, he had great taste in thighs.
He's still alive. He's very old.
I hope whoever he's fucking has great thighs.
She looks exactly like his wife looks exactly like a Robert Crumb drawing. I mean, kind of. Robert Crumb has some weird tastes, but I mean, he got what he wanted, so no hate there. This is a really weird. This is a really weird tangent. Sorry. We could do a retrospective on
Crumb of Pussy.
Yeah.
Episode title: Crumb of Pussy.
Disgusting. Absolutely.
That's not a little good.
Disgusting. No, COC.
Why?
That's just classless when you do it that. Cunt is just mean. It's like it's not a fun. It's like an angry Englishman.
Robert Crumb
1920s.
is God's most accomplished pervert. Like
he was Dan Bolton.
Oh God. Dan does not hold a candle to him in terms of his horniness.
Damn, Dan called out. Please come back, Dan.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay, but I do want to say a little topic. I have two more segments, and then I think I have a pretty clear case for you guys. The first of the two is why I think they're building their house on a foundation of sand, and the second is why I think this is really, really important. Why they're building on a foundation of sand? I think fundamentally the issue, like definitionally, that they're having what is parapolitics, and us trying to like understand what the fuck they're talking about. I think it highlights a blindness in Marxist theory and people that apply it in the way they view politics. So in the way that they have to define this metapolitics as this this strange thing, parapolitical. Basically, we're talking about tribal familial ties. Like that's ultimately what pretty much the vast majority of these conspiracies come down to. Or obviously there is the CIA. They love to always point at the CIA as this boogeyman. I can't disagree, but
they're bad. They're professional boogeymen. I mean, let's be clear.
Yeah,
that is the job.
They are. Yeah, the glowies are out to get us all. But anyway, I'm just going to say that's like a key challenge. They also have this view of sort of communism or mass democracy as normative, and so people from our sort of background milieu have obviously sort of seen some of the challenges with this, and democracy and how genuine it ever is. So, I think that's another sort of core assumption, and it's coloring some of their understanding of these conspiracies. And they also, from all my research, they're very retrospective heavy. Like they're not talking about COVID. They're not talking about, some of the things people like on our side would talk about necessarily. But a lot of it is so backwards looking. Like they're still doing deep dives into JFK. They're still talking about, Israel in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s and all that. Like,
I mean,
there's a challenge there.
I mean, is that because
they have no vision of the future? That's what they lack. They lack a central political formula.
They believe in mass demonstration still as well. Like there's a lot of this Marxist stuff that they're stuck in.
How can you believe in deep politics and mass demonstration?
That is the mystery, and I think that they're going to keep butting their heads into that, because I see a lot of their posts and their things are about supporting the Palestinian protest on college campuses, and it's like, oh yeah, dude, I'm sure, a bunch of students. Yeah, I'm sure that, with no actual power over anything yet, that's going to change it. Because they lack a sophisticated understanding of the civil rights movement. They lack some of these things that people on our side have sort of like harder knowledge that has kind of come about, but they have knowledge that people on our side don't have. And so I guess that's why I want to spin this in a positive way and say, I actually think this is like a really great thing that's happening, because they're going to keep growing. Another reason is obviously there's the disintegration of the Democratic Party. We're recording this on the very evening that Biden, certainly was not, led backstage after testing 100% positive for COVID, handcuffed to a bed and horse kicked until he said he would, his aide could tweet out that he didn't want to be president anymore. Definitely nothing weird happened.
There's a wicker-bottomed chair in the Oval Office that is missing its seat.
Oh man! Oh, his hairy legs, his hairy legs exposed. Corn pop coming out, swinging that whatever they hit his nuts
like
with.
a knotted rope. Yeah.
Well, if you
knotted rope.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, Mr. Harad, fellow co-host of the TOOKY'S Mag, how does this tie in to the arts? Right, because the whole point of this pod is that we had to tie into some point into the artistic industry. So how does parapolitics tie into the art industry?
It's more cultural than pure art, I would say. In terms of, I see this as the seeds of a people that we will synthesize with. Like the left-right synthesis that was foretold by Dave Green, Once Upon a Moon. I think it will occur. What was the line? Blue eyes, red heart. And I think people on this train of thought with it, I think this movement is the new Libertarian Party. I'm stepping out on the pitch here. I'm pointing at the sky right now, 2024, July 2024. This movement is going to grow, and it will be siphoned or merge into the kind of people we talk to more. Because I think once you start, opinions, ideas are not independent, right? They have, like dominoes, you come to one conclusion, therefore, thus, the next one, the next one, the next one. Once you start popping some of these questions out and our democracy continually disintegrates, they're going to have to come up with answers to these questions. And it's not it's not in our space necessarily to do this, but I do think these are the kind of people that, I don't know, someone like Dave Green maybe should be talking to rather than dinguses in corn suits. Just a thought. This is more cultural commentary than art commentary.
What's a corn?
There was a guy in a corn costume, like a literal costume. He was dressed like a cob of, a corn cob.
Yes, his debate, the corn cob man. Yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
Sorry. Well, I 100% agree with this, and what ties into art for me is that the Democrats. I think James Carville, the PR man for Bill Clinton. When Bill Clinton went on that black man stage and he did the do.
You mean when he played saxophone?
The saxophone?
Yeah.
Yeah, but saxophone instrument, right? Where it goes quote unquote apolitical. What apolitical means is when a political party.
Now you're talking like James Carville.
A political party has such a monopoly on force and mainstream force or the cathedral force is what they designate as apolitical. They basically they let their participants have fun, and you don't have to think about
Bill
the
Clinton
point.
playing the saxophone
Right? So,
was in the opening theme song of Tiny Toon Adventures, a children's show in the mid 90s. I know you don't remember that because you didn't exist for 10 years. Your parents may not have been were probably going through puberty at the time that show was on the air. So,
yes, the Caesarean spirit was not born with
right? That would probably be an example. Yes, that is an example of the total capture of the narrative. Right. When one president when a president's cute hobby is part of a children's show.
And who embodies that in our era? Destiny, Hasan, and like the cultural movement around them. No, I'm like, seriously, think about that. And then that's breaking down now. And my call I'm making is that this kind of community will like be receiving the people that are, I was 17 and watching Destiny. Oh, so cringe. But, then you graduate on into something that actually questions these things. But it's not as challenging as the stuff we present necessarily. People in our circles, which it requires a little more deprogramming. Like you can still come in believing in, because they don't make as many statements on like, mass migration, some of the cultural, social aspects they don't really even touch on.
Well, the thing about dissident right art, as far as what we've covered, it is still in dialogue with the present regime. Like very few art constructs an idea of the future of a new status quo. It's a reaction. The point of the reaction hearing. If you look at books, what we've covered so far, everything from my wife, Honor Levy, Marty Phillips, what's the other M?
Mark Marlowe,
the guy who wrote Jacalopians. Mark Marlowe, friend of the show, Mark Marlowe. It's reaction to modernity. If you were to give this to a centrist, for example, if I were to give Jacalopians and Millennium to my mom or my dad, who was like 90 centrist, don't give a fuck about, I don't care about politics. Yes, okay. They can read English. They can read English despite being former European aristocrats who own vineyards, very Babian, right? They as fully neo-libs. They would not. Those two books, Millennium and Jacalopians, would not scare the hoes. It's not a truly right-wing point of view because it's still in dialogue. It's still dialectic with modernity. Those two books are so far with distant lit. They still do not pursue a truly parapolitical view, which is an entirely new concept of reality. If you look at, for example, let's say the Soviet Union, there's this great clip. I highly recommend clipping YouTube Soviet girl flag girl.
What the fuck?
Right? There's this beautiful video. Yes, no, for real. I'm being serious. There's this beautiful video of when the Soviets took over Berlin. And there's this girl, and she's doing this whole fucking flag poses. Like, like fake jobs companies give to women to make them feel important. This is a Soviet equivalent of this.
I'm so upset that Soviet girl flag girl came up with exactly what you were fucking talking about. Because that is such gibberish. I thought it was like hand hook man car door. Like it was like, yeah.
It's real.
Here we are in Berlin. The Reichstag is opposite, and she does a cute little dance with her Soviet flags. Like
she's very hot.
And TikTok girls before it was a thing. Yeah.
Yes, for real. Like she has a beautiful face. She has an excellent skull.
What about pure Aryan sculpture?
Look at her. If you were to ask her, well, listen. As a Balkan, I appreciate the Slavs, despite being a Southern Goth myself. But in reality, when you look at her, if you were to ask her in that very moment, flags in her hand, what Soviet communism means, she would have a utopian view of the world, and all of art before Stalin's death, friend of the show, Stalin, before Stalin's death and after Stalin's death. It was pure Robert Heinlein. Like, if you read classic Soviet sci-fi, it was 100% pure utopianism. Like, for real, they worship science in a very weird way, despite other than the eugenic biological element, obviously. But they viewed utopianism as an achievable thing. And if you look at it in terms of parapolitic, if you look at the modern leftist point of view, they have no vision of the future. It is merely the maintaining of the current weird racial republicanism. I mean, republicanism in the classical sense. If you were to read, let's say, for example, Passage Press Volume 2, a book re-reviewed, it's one of the few pieces of art that deal with scientific concepts and actually push it forward. I forgot the author, but The Sun is Born, IVF and genetic testing. The leftists no longer have a monopoly on the idea of science because they can no longer conceive an idea of the future. It is an eternal present.
Man, I don't think that's the right read on the left.
Well, you don't think so?
No, I don't think. I mean, they definitely have the eternal present is not that they prefer the present. It's that they hate the past.
Exactly. They do hate the past.
They want gay space communism.
They have no concept of the past as anything that ought to be learned from or honored.
Well, but the thing is,
hold on, and their future is an immanentized eschaton,
right?
Like, the eschaton is around the corner, and it's not the return of Christ. It's not. It's not even the Christ coming the first time. it's climate change. It's an anti-human future. They imagine a future solely in terms of the negation of people.
Right.
So, and like they want to achieve that through whatever means are necessary. It's
or Marxist utopianism, because there's different factions too. Like I think
how many leftist natalists are there actually?
None. There's zero natalists. They don't breed. They can't breed. The classic incel fucking Wojak, I can't breed, right? With the classic I can't breed, it's the reason why they're incel. They can't breed. Their fundamental belief system is they can't breed. That's the difference between the cute Russian waifu waving her flags. Is that the Russian who believed in communism from 1930s to 60s, 70s, they have a very distinct optimism about the future. They want to go to space. They want to colonize space. They want to colonize the whole world. They had a very Schmittian concept of world war ideology, right? It's theory of the partisan, right? The modern leftist is terrified of anything outside the status quo. They have no vision. If you ask a Soviet in 1960, a chick with a vagina and everything, right? If you ask her, yo, do you think we will have a Soviet republic on Mars by 2060? She would say, fuck yeah. They were optimists. They were high on hopium. If you look at leftists today, if you look at from their point of view, they're very conspiratorial, they're very negative oriented, and they have no vision of the future. They have none. You're right, they're anti-human. Look at all of the Soviet realism of the Stalinist era, before the era. Their art was actually kind of genuinely good, right? Because it was at least some vision of the future utopia, of the future of the idea of a stateless society, whatever the fuck, right? Where is leftist art? If I was a leftist, where is the leftist art that gives me hope? If you look at, I talked about this with a certain someone, I forgot who, but that film Civil War, where the Trump standard gets shot by a black woman. There's no hope in that film. Even as a leftist, if you look at Battleship Potemkin or all of the classic leftist propaganda, there is a strong sense of this very populist energy of we're driving to the future. If you look at the film Civil War, if you look at all leftist media, it is critiquing the right, but it gives no hope. Leftists are fueled purely by anger and resentment. It's the opposite of the cliche of the right-winger, of the incel, of the white man gamer incel. The white ring gamer incel, what does he want in 100 years? He wants spaceships on Mars. He wants eugenics. He wants good art. What does the leftist want? He wants the negation of his enemy, but they have no concept of the future. That's why they can't allow books like Mixtape Hyperborea, Incel. Like these two books, or honestly, most of our books are reviewed, are not like schizo, Twitter, or 4chan, or Telegram tier right wing. We have reviewed very, very few genuinely schizo left-wing books. Like maybe like Justin Moan. For the most part, I can very easily...
Moan was a
Moan was a centrist.
Yeah.
He just hated glowies.
Glowies, right? But
honestly, dude, he might have been in this. He might have been a great Parapolitics poster.
I think he probably did not have this. Some of these things seem slightly coherent. Moan was an actual crazy. Sorry, he's alive. Yeah, he's in prison for a long time.
Future guest star,
Justin. Have your warden call our warden.
As far as we know, he's alive. I'll ask both of you: if we were talking the 90s, if it was 1995. Would any of...
And we were doing this on AM radio right after Art Bell.
Exactly. Would any of our books be controversial? Would Rush Limbaugh like any of our books? Would any of the books we reviewed so far be controversial in the Overton window of 1995?
No.
They wouldn't. And actually, my point about the utopian things actually was more of a historical perspective. I agree with your guys' point. Like what leftism has shifted a lot in just the last decade or two, to the point that, I mean, there was a more of a positive vision, Bill Clinton playing the saxophone, to go back to that. There was this view of, the Burger King Kids Club brought to real life, and things could work out really well. And I think it's just one of those cases where material reality is like kind of hitting some of their ideas in the face, and some of those positive visions aren't paying off. And that's why I think there's going to be this this shift, and I think people are going to are looking for answers. I think this movement that I've stumbled upon is like a small, maybe one of several that are starting up and are kind of offering some answers, but they're still in the framework of in this case Marxism specifically, which is not exactly what the regime is practicing. It's just like a what would you call it, like an intelligentsia toy to keep people busy thinking about these things.
A status quo enforcement. It's status quo. It's the Red Queen principle. People have to run twice as fast to stay in the same place. It's the Red Queen's principle from Alice in Wonderland.
I see that as the trend going forward is that there's no answers there. They're looking for them. This is a place they can get some answers, but I don't think they're going to be able to. It'll be more accurate predicting reality than liberalism has been in the way things are changing now. And so it will serve people better in that way, but they're still going to be shocked by certain things because they don't have quite the same understanding of like tribalism, things like that I think are necessary. But 2 beers later, I won't get any more political than that. But I just want to share with you guys, and now that you guys know what Parapolitics is in this sense, like should we be rebranding as a Parapolitics podcast? Because some of these guys are making pretty good money.
As a parapolitical cast. I mean, I see. I'm looking at Subliminal Jihad right now in the other tab, and I'm gonna give them a listen and see if I can tolerate it. And We have some interesting mutuals in common.
I noticed that as well. I was like, damn, I'm late to the party.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'll check it out.
I'm looking forward to the computer room episode on this. Just FYI, based on mutuals here. So.
Yes, for real. Like, she has a beautiful face. She has an excellent skull structure.